reading and discussing the Bhajan Rahasya. Okay, let me get the guitar. So I'm going to try to do these classes whenever I'm not traveling or don't have any other engagement. I can't say that I'll do it every single day, but I'll try my best to do it when I'm available. Okay. We're ready to roll. And to inaugurate this series of classes, we'll chant Shri Radhika Stava. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Gokula Taruni Mandala Maki Jai. Gokula Taruni Mandala Maki Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Damodara Vardhana Veshe Hari Niskuta Vrinda Vipineshe. Damodarati Vardhana Veshe Hari Niskuta Vrinda Vipineshe. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Vrishabhandati Navasashi Leke Sakita Saki Guna Ramita Vishage. Vrishabhandati Navasashi Leke Sakita Saki Guna Ramita Vishage. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Karunam Karunamai Karuna Bhante Sanaka Sanatana Bharata Charite. Karuna Bhante Sanaka Sanatana Bharata Charite. Radhe Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Tarani Mandala Mahite. Tarani Mandala Mahite. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Ichai Kor, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Jaya Jaya Prabhu. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. So, Jaya Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Paramacharya, Keta Satashi, Shima, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chanana, the Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharashila, Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti, Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shirveda Garadha, Shiva Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath, Sayamakunda Radhakunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So for those of you who are just joining us, we are attempting to start our regular classes at this particular time, which is 5:00 Eastern Daylight Time, Eastern Standard Time. And whatever time it is, wherever else you are in the world, that's the time. And we'll try to do it every day while we're not traveling or don't have any other engagement. And if I can't give it on those particular days, I'll send out a notice that there's no class. So let us start. Let me start by reading the translation to this song by Srila Rupa Goswami called Shri Radhika Stava. O Radha, all glory is unto you, all glory is unto you, beloved of Madhava, object of worship for all the young girls of Gokula. You dress yourself in such a way as to increase Lord Damodar's love and attachment for you. You are the controller of Vrindavan, the pleasure groves of Lord Hari. You are a new moon arisen from the ocean of King Vrishabhanu. You are the friend of Lalita, and your wonderful qualities, friendliness, kindness, and faithfulness to Krishna, endear you to Vishaka. You are an ocean of compassion, and your divine characteristics are described by the four Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat Kumar. O Radha, please be merciful to me. So, let us start sharing the Bhajan Rahasya by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We left off sort of a third of the way through the Bhajan Rahasya, and which is in the version that I'm reading, which is about page 20. And so we'll continue reading about the holy name, and then how to connect with the holy name, and how to become a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How about that? That's very, very interesting. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to share the screen. And there the screen is. And so you can read along with us. There we go. Perfect. And let me set the chat window on the side in case someone has a heart attack or something. They can let me know while I'm giving class, so I can call the hospital. So, okay. So we're talking about the glories of the holy name. And we left off with this particular verse, which is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I believe it's also from the Puranas too. And Prabhupada would quote this verse quite often. So, Om Ganat Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshur and Meditam Gena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. Srila Prabhupada would quote this verse quite often. Atakshi Krishna Navadi Tapavet Krayam Indriya Seva Mukhe Diwado Swameva Sparachada, which is translated here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur that Krishna and his names cannot be grasped by the material senses, but when a person develops the tendency to accept the Lord's name and form, Krishna then spontaneously appears on the tongue and in the other senses. As from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1 to 234. Now, Srila Prabhupada gave a little bit different translation to this particular verse. And I'm going to give you a rough paraphrase of his translation. That while one is in the material world or has material senses, one cannot understand the holy name of Krishna or understand Krishna. But when one serves Krishna, Sevamukhe Jiwado, which Jiwa means the tongue, when one serves with his mouth and tongue, serve Krishna, then Krishna reveals himself to him. So it's a little bit different translation here. Here, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Krishna then spontaneously appears on the tongue and the other senses. Both are true. But I actually like Srila Prabhupada's translation better, which Srila Prabhupada states that we serve Krishna with the tongue, and of course we serve Krishna with the tongue, both by taking prasadam and by vibrating the tongue and glorifying the Supreme Personality of God and chanting his holy names. So then Krishna will manifest himself. And of course this is very much in tune with the Shikshashtaka, which states, what? Chetodarpanalajanam, Bhavamahad Bhagini Nirvapanam. By the chanting of the Lord's holy names, the heart becomes cleansed and one achieves the victory in spiritual life. So we'll continue here. One should endeavor for qualification by the name, for the name by positive action. Very interesting. Endeavor for qualification for the name. So we have to become qualified. Now, what is that qualification? Let's just read a little here and then we'll talk about that. Sve sve dikareya nishta sa guna parirtata vipariyastu dosha shad ubhyar esha nischaya. Being fixed according to one's qualification is a good quality. And to be fixed in something not of one's qualification is a bad quality. This is how good and bad are determined. Really interesting verse from the Bhagavatam 11:21-2. So what that verse indicates, actually the verse can be applied in many different ways. Let's say we are on a certain level of devotional service, and we do have the qualification to chant the holy name, let's say, theoretically, hypothetically, but we may not have the qualification to meditate on Krishna's Rasa Leela, or Krishna's interactions with the gopis, deep romantic interactions with the gopis. So if we actually meditate artificially on Krishna's interactions with the gopis and we're not qualified, then guess what? That's a bad quality. But if we meditate according to our, and here's the word that we should use, adhikar. Adhikar means basically your qualification, like what you're qualified for. So we meditate according to our qualification, then that's a good quality. So in other words, we have to understand what our qualification is, not only insofar as chanting the holy name, but insofar as different aspects of Krishna consciousness. Very, very interesting verse. I'm going to note that down because I want to look up that verse later on. 11:21-2. Very, very interesting verse. So now Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues with describing the qualification for the name is described, and this is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam also. Wow. This is a high qualification. Jata Shrado Matkatasu Nirvana Sarva Karmasu Veda Dukat Makang Kaman Purityage Pranishvara Topajeta Mamprita Shradalur Dridhanishchiha Dushamanas Jatan Kaman Dugo Darkams Jagar Hayan. Having developed faith in topics about me and being disgusted with all karmas, a devotee knows that all enjoyments are filled with misery. But he is unable to give them up. Still, with affection for me, with faith and determination, he will continue worshipping me while at the same time partaking of those enjoyments which give rise to suffering and yet condemning them. Very interesting verse. In other words, the essential aspect, quality here is, guess what? Shraddha. This is mentioned, Jata Shraddha, that one has Jata developed faith in Mat Kathasu, in Krishna's pastimes. Nirvana Sarvakamarsu, he's disgusted. It's actually very interesting, easy Sanskrit. He's disgusted with karmic activities, of course, vikarmic activities are a different thing, but karmic, positive things for material enjoyment. And then the Vedas describe dukkhat makam, that come on, parityage, one should give up these things. And they are miserable and temporary. But still, he should continue worshiping Krishna with love and faith, with firm determination. I'm not reading the translation right now, I'm just going by the Sanskrit. At the same time, he should jakan, dushamanas jakam, dukkhadarsham. He should understand how miserable the material world is. So there's a good, amazing verse. In other words, the qualification for chanting the Lord's holy name is the faith in the holy name, but you don't have to give up all of your material desires, but at least understand that material desires are giving you misery. And try to purify yourself, that eventually you get a higher taste. Rasovarsham, rasopya, paramjasami vartate. Really, is such an interesting verse. Wow. Well, reading these things, I'm just getting more and more realizations. So, anyway, that's the basic qualification. Faith in the holy name, understanding the position of material enjoyments, understanding how they cause misery. Don't be guilty that you are partaking of these material enjoyments. Of course, material enjoyments means things that are not sinful. This verse is not advocating, smoking marijuana or doing anything that is sinful. This verse advocates doing things that are pious in this material world, or aren't connected with sinful activity. Really interesting. Yeah, we all have these, like we like to taste nice food. We're not at the level. I mean, just give an example. I'm not at the level of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, let's say Raghunath Das Goswami, who would just eat rejected rice that even the cows wouldn't touch. And that was his persona, and he lived a long life. If I were to do such a thing, I would live a very short life, probably less than a month. So we have to understand what level we're at, understand, this striving for satisfaction of the tongue, using that as an example again, is not going to give us ultimate happiness, but still, because we have that desire, like Prabhupada said, performing devotional service is like you need some salt in your food, So too much salt will give you disease. Too little salt will be tasteless. So sense gratification, yeah, a little bit, according to what you need. Again, that's very much connected with my teachings of empathic communication. In empathic communication, we all understand we have certain needs, basic needs. And as Bhaktivinoda Thakur states in the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, that without fulfilling those needs, one cannot progress in bhakti. So everybody has different needs according to their level of spiritual advancement, according to their physical body, according to their samskaras. So we do not impose a particular standard on different devotees as long as they stay within the guidelines given to us by our founder Acharya. In other words, eat prasadam, don't eat at restaurants. You eat at restaurants, non-Krishna conscious restaurants, your mind will become wicked. So, let's continue. One should strive for a nature favorable to bhakti. Utsahan nishchayadharya tata karma vartanat sangha changat sato vrite sadhya bhakti prasidyati. And of course that's from the Upadeshamrita. You should be enthusiastic, have faith, be determined. A little bit different translation here. Attraction for devotional activities. Well, the translation probably gives is tat, following the rules and regulations. Give up bad association, which is actually mentioned here too. And follow sato vrite in the footsteps of the sadhus. And these particular aspects will actually help you increase bhakti or nourish bhakti as mentioned here. So, yeah, Upadeshamrita. One must strive, here's a verse by Lord Kapiladev. One must strive, here's another thing we have to do to have the qualification for chanting the holy name. One must strive for real devotee association. That means devotees who are averse to criticizing others, devotees who are attached to the holy name, devotees who are dedicated to the service of the spiritual master, devotees are fixed in their sadhana. So we should strive for that particular association. Satam Sangan, Mama Virya Samvado, famous verse, Bhavanti Vrikarna, Vasayana Kata, Dejoshana Dasha Vabagar, Vartmani, Shraddha Ratirvakti Anukrameshati. From association with the best devotees, topics of my glorious pastimes become directly realized, bringing the devotee to Nishta. Then, what does Nishta mean? Nishta means steadiness in devotional service. Then the topics become an elixir for the heart and ears at the stage of ruchi by taste for these topics, asakti, bhava, and then prema for the Lord, who is the destroyer of material life, quickly develop in sequence. That's Bhagavatam 3:25. Very, very nice. So Prabhupada translates a little bit differently. Again, if I'm paraphrasing this translation. By association with the devotees and hearing about Krishna's heroic activities, the sound vibration enters from the ear to the heart and purifies the heart, rasayana kata, that transcendental sound vibration. And in this way, one proceeds on the path of liberation, gradually developing shraddha, faith, taste, and devotion, which follow one after the other. That's Prabhupada's translation, roughly. The manner of association with devotees is described. And this is actually also from the Upadeshamrita. Krishnati asya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chet pranativisja bhajantam isham shushushya bhajanavigyam ananyamanya nindari shunya viddam ipsata sangalabhya. One should mentally honor the devotee. In other words, we have to distinguish between different devotees on different levels of devotional service. This is very important. Not that we criticize anybody, but we should understand the difference so we can interact with these different types of devotees in different ways. So he should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of Krishna. That is the Kanishta devotee. Also it's mentioned that we offer obeisances in the mind, which Prabhupada says the same thing. He should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation and is engaged in worshiping the deity, the Madhyama devotee. He should associate with and faithfully serve that devotee who is skillful in worship and whose heart is completely devoid of criticizing others. There's that interesting point. Whose heart is completely devoid of criticizing others. Uttama adhikari, Uttama devotee, Upadeshamrita 5. I think I should speak a little bit about that. Many times, especially nowadays, when we find devotees with different, let's say, political, I don't want to use the word political, but let's say right wing or left wing means of presenting Krishna consciousness or performing Krishna consciousness. Okay, I guess I should unpack that. Left wing devotees, or let's say liberals, for lack of a better word, they're ready to throw out all sorts of external, let's say, manifestations other than chanting the holy name and being a vegetarian, offering your food to Krishna. But at least they're ready to throw out the dress code, the tilak, everything. And consider those things to be, I'm not taking a position, so considering those things to be details rather than principles. That's left wing. And then right wing, we have devotees who think that everything has to be according to what they consider to be Indian culture, which basically they don't even understand what Vedic culture is. Sorry, I shouldn't criticize them. Because basically what we see in India, even 100, 200 years ago, has nothing to do with what was happening 5,000 years ago when Krishna was present, because India was a captive nation for the last 1,500 years. So anyway, you have both people who think everything is so strict. Just to give an example, on the right hand, the conservatives think, women should be in the kitchen, just cooking and scrubbing and everything like that. And the others think that, women can do everything and men can't, which is, I'm not going to take a position in this particular respect. Okay. So, but what the problem is, the problem is not those two extremes. That's not a problem, because people can have different points of view and still be Krishna conscious. But the problem is when they attack each other as being counterproductive for preaching, in Maya, disobeying His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And so you end up with this criticism of devotees between each other, both extremes. They're criticizing each other, not in every case, because I'm not going to turn this into a criticism, but I'm just doing an observation here. They're criticizing each other, and they're not understanding that each devotee is trying their best to spread Krishna consciousness. It's not that we should criticize others who have a different way of spreading Krishna consciousness. So an Uttama adhikari does not criticize others. An Uttama adhikari will criticize, particularly, let's say criticize a philosophy that someone may have, if it's a Mayavadi or impersonalistic philosophy. If someone is not a devotee, they may actually call them a hog dog, camera, or an ass. Don't do that. That's kind of dangerous. But they will not criticize other devotees who are performing devotional service according to their own realizations. So an Uttama Adhikari has to be one who can appreciate both sides or all sides of different conflicts and not criticize anyone. He can have his own opinion, but he should not be criticizing anyone. So we have to stay away from this criticism, because this criticism actually takes us away from pure Krishna consciousness. One should respect repeatedly in the mind a person who says Krishna's name without duplicity. One should respect and follow in the footsteps of the person who worships Krishna after attaining a bhakti sampradaya, in other words, initiated. One should continually serve the person who is devoid of thinking of mind and others, and he performs pure worship. It's a Uttama Adhikari. The person should chant the name while maintaining his body according to Yukta Vairagya. Another important verse which Prabhupada would quote all the time. Because Yukta Vairagya means being free of passion or desire to enjoy the material world. And Yukta means to accept. So you have sort of a contradiction between the two terms here. Vairagya, renunciation. Yukta means to accept. So our Yukta Vairagya, accepting renunciation, means to accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's surrendering principles, Sharanagati, and also reject everything unfavorable. That's our Yukta Vairagya. So if something's favorable, like using a computer or using a car or anything, we can accept it as long as it's within the boundaries that Srila Prabhupada gave us, the principles that Srila Prabhupada has given us. So as Prabhupada said, utility is the principle. That's exactly the same thing. Utility is the principle, purity is the force. And of course, the books are the basis and preaching is the essence. We understand those 4 points that Prabhupada would make. So here's this quote from another quote from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-255. Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatharam Upayunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchate. The vairagya of that person who employs objects suitable for devotional development while remaining detached from them is said to be suitable for bhakti. The objects should be persistently related to Krishna. In other words, utility is the principle. That if something can be used for Krishna and you don't use it, then it's called Falgu Vairagya. Maybe that verse is one of the next verses. Let's see. I don't see it. No. Anyway, Falgu Vairagya means false renunciation. So to reject something that can be used and you have the adhikar to use it and it's not breaking the principles or practices or whatever of Krishna consciousness, that should be used. As I often tell the devotees, our motto is more devotees, happier devotees. So whatever achieves that goal should be employed, should be done. More devotees, happier devotees. And we're talking about real devotees, not just, sahaja devotees. So here's another verse from the Bhagavatam 7:11-32. Vricha swabhava kritiya vardhamana swakarma krit vitva swabhava jam karma shanar niguna tam yat. If one acts in his profession according to his nature, after gradually giving up his actions according to his nature, he attains the stage beyond the gunas. In other words, act according to your varnashram status. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Whatever it is, and giving up the attachment, then eventually you become Sagunan Samati Chaitan, Brahma Guya Kapate. You become transcendental to the modes of nature. And here Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, we should take shelter of an occupation according to one's nature, take in shelter of Krishna's name, and live life without sin. So whatever occupation you have should not be sinful, be karmic. Of course, then the question arises, which is quite interesting, that whatever occupation you have in this world, there will always be some connection, I mean, at least in the Western world and in India, with sinful activities. I mean, practically whatever you do, there's some connection, but you're not directly doing the sin. I'll give you an example. Let's say one's a taxi driver. Then they have to transport meat and liquor. You know, the customers have meat and liquor sometimes. What can you do? Or if you're, let's say you go shopping in Walmart. Some of you may not know what Walmart is. But anyway, if you go shopping in Walmart for food, then you're not only associating with people and seeing people buy the meat, fish, eggs, and everything like that, but you're paying money to people who will be utilizing that money to do these sinful activities. So there's always some connection, but one should not directly involve themselves in sinful activity. Although there's always some connection in this material world. This scale is described prana vrityaiva santushen munir nayavendriya priyai ganam yata nashyeta navakirtyeta vanmana. A learned sage should take his satisfaction with the actions of his prana, that means his bodily life airs, and should not seek satisfaction through the sense objects. In other words, one should care for the material body in such a way that one's higher knowledge is not destroyed, and so that one's speech and mind are not deviating from self-realization. In other words, take care of your body, but don't pamper it. You know, there's a fine line, or not such fine line, between taking care of your body and mind, understanding your basic necessities or needs. This is actually very important, actually part of the teachings of empathic communication. You understand what are your basic needs. And I mentioned before, everybody has different basic needs according to the level of spiritual advancement, according to how old you are, according to different aspects of your karma, your whatever, samskaras. And so just fulfill those needs. But any more than that is too much. So you have to ascertain for yourself. That's not anyone else's responsibility to ascertain it for you. And don't criticize someone else who is accepting more than you because they may have more needs. It's a fact. You know, even according to one's age. I mean, for example, when I was young, I did not have as much, let's say, physical needs in terms of, comfortable situation. I slept on the floor. It's not a bad idea. And, there's no question of a hot shower or warm shower or anything like that. Living very, very austerely. Actually, it sounds attractive. But now I'm accepting a little bit more comfort because I understand with the body I have, it would be detrimental to my health and well-being. And how can I perform bhakti if I was sick? Even right now I have all these different supplements I take. Oh my God, just to keep myself going. And had I been doing that 50 years ago when I first joined Krishna, 55 years ago, I would have been in Maya doing that. So now, I'm not Maya, I hope. Who knows? Anyway, so one has to really ascertain and don't criticize others. One should be careful in one's association. Wow, this is a very important verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is originally from the it's originally from the Hari Bhakti Shuddhaya. Yasha yat sangati pumso manibat shat satradguna swakula dradyai tato divan svayutanyeva Sangshriyat. A man will attain the qualities of the person with whom he associates. Wow. Just as a crystal takes up the color of the object next to it. Therefore, the wise man will take shelter of those who have qualities like his own for the prosperity of his family. Wow. Very interesting. Crystal takes up the color of the object next to it, so we take up the qualities of the person who we associate with. Of course, association is by sound vibration. Physical association is there too. But the sound vibration, as mentioned by Lord Kapila Bhavanti Red Karna, goes from the ear to the heart. Prabhupada said there's a channel between the ear and the heart. And in that channel, or through that channel, the modes of nature or Krishna consciousness can proceed. One should follow the path of the Mahajanas. Interesting verse. Samridya Shreyasame tu panta santa pavarajata anabhapta shamam purve yena santa patashtire. One should follow the scriptural rules which give the highest benefit and are devoid of hardship, by which the previous devotees easily progress, Skanda Purana. So one follows the rules which are appropriate for one person. So in other words, the guru, the acharya, has to really tell us which rules are appropriate for us and which rules would just create hardship. An example is sometimes we have these rules in the Hari Bhakti Vilas that would create extreme hardship for us if we followed. And Prabhupada did not follow them, such as not eating carrots, like that. There were other rules too, which I'm not going to get to right now. But it says, by which the previous devotees easily progress. So Prabhupada's the devotee, he's the acharya, and he explained to us what rules to follow, which rules were important. I mean, Prabhupada, even on Ekadashi, would have Ekadashi feast prepared, and he would always concentrate on preaching Krishna consciousness more than anything else. Prabhupada never focused on bodily austerities when it was necessary, but there wasn't a focus on the bodily austerities. For example, in Bombay, Prabhupada wanted to start the temple, so the devotees had to live in a very austere condition with basically rats running all over the place. But it's not that Prabhupada wanted that, or Prabhupada considered that important. What was important for accepting what's necessary for spreading Krishna consciousness. So here's another interesting verse. Wow. Shruti Smriti Purnani Pancharatraka Vidhim Vinay Kantaki Harir Bhakti Upata Yaiva Kalpate. Even if a person seems to have attained steadiness in practicing pure bhakti to the Lord, that bhakti is a misfortune if it rejects the rules of Shruti, Smriti, Purana, and Pancharatra due to lack of faith in them. Now Prabhupada translates this one a little bit differently. That if one so-called as devotionals, I'm just paraphrasing, it's not an exact citation. If one performs devotional service and doesn't follow the Shruti, Smriti, and Purana and Pancharatra, Shruti means the Vedas, Smriti means the supplementary literatures, Purana means like the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Purana, Pancharatra means the instructions like of Narada Muni. If one disobeys these particular rules, gives them up, the Vidhi, that means rules, then his bhakti, Prabhupada translates this verse, is a disturbance to society. If one does not endeavor to destroy anarthas, in other words, you have to endeavor to destroy. Anarthas means unwanted things like lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy. One will not receive the mercy of the name, and one will be unfortunate. Without the mercy of the name, despite millions of efforts, one cannot give up the anarthas. So in other words, you have to endeavor to destroy the anarthas, but you need the mercy to be of the name. You will not receive the mercy of the name unless you endeavor to destroy anarthas. And without the mercy, you can't give up the anarthas. So the way to do it is one who chants with sincere endeavor will remove anarthas in a few days. Hear and chant without anarthas. Surrender to the name in full devotion. So how do you do that? Again, we've been talking about this recently. One should be very much focused on the here and now. Of course, nowadays they call that mindfulness. Mindfulness means you don't think about the future, you don't think about the past, you're just absorbed in what you're doing, the chanting, of course, at this particular moment, and just focus on the sound vibration. That's how you can hear and chant without anarthas, even right now. And then it's stated, if one chants with sincere endeavor, will remove one who chants with sincere endeavor will remove anarthas in a few days. A few days sounds to me like 2 weeks or less. Whew. What are we doing wrong? We're not focused on the holy name. We don't have this faith that Krishna is there in his holy name. Isn't it? We just don't have the faith. We should pause while we're chanting if we're being inattentive and think, what am I doing? I'm supposed to have faith. Krishna is there. He's non-different from his name. Okay, so we're going to end now to allow more time for questions. As I know, some of the comments I had before was that we didn't allow enough time for questions, so we got to stop sharing. And if some of you have questions, you can raise your hand and you can ask your questions, and I'll unmute you or allow you to unmute. So does anybody have any questions before we end? Otherwise we end early. And so we're going to try to do this every day. Today we have 21 people so far. And I think as time goes on, we'll actually get more people. So any questions or comments about any of the things? A lot of important information here. A lot of important information. I'm so glad we started reading this again, because I'm getting so many nice realizations by reading this and teaching this. And actually, we mentioned this morning in class, for those of you who were listening, when you teach, I'm not saying preach, when you teach and you share Krishna consciousness, the realizations just pour in. So that's, everyone should somehow or other share Krishna consciousness with others. Okay. Questions, comments, arguments? No? Okay, you can raise your hand. Raising your hand means not in the video, but in the reaction. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little reaction thing, and it says raise hand. You raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or you can type in the chat window, type your question. I guess no one has a question. So, okay. Anyway, thank you very much. So we're going to try to start this class every day at the same time, except when we're traveling. And we're going to continue reading the Bhajan Rahasya, which we've been reading today, of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Very, very, very important book. And the classes also are available on YouTube, on my channel on YouTube, under the heading or the playlist of Bhajan Rahasya, and they're also available, at least temporarily, on Facebook, my Facebook page. Okay, on that happy note, thank you very much. All glories to His Divine Grace. Save your questions tomorrow, because I'm going to try to give more time, like 15 minutes at the end, for questions. So please save your questions, note them down. Questions about anything, particularly the subject matter of class, but anything you want to ask questions about relating or regarding Krishna consciousness. Okay. All glories to His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivinoda.